with a topic very specific, taking us away from pharmaceutics, farm chemistry, and many of the pharmaceutical aspect, and into medical devices, introduction and insights by Arvindan Vasudevan. I have a great pleasure today to welcome all of you, and most important, my good friend Arvindan Vasudevan, and co-founder of Actorius Innovations. And I'm very happy to introduce Arvindan for his background. Arvindan is a graduate and postgraduate from University of Mumbai. He served as a research scientist with Piramal Drug Discovery, Piramal Healthcare and Life Sciences for a long stint of a time, 2005 to 2011, 7 years. Many of you who know Arvindan Vasudevan probably are not aware that Arvindan has worked extensively in, more important, he has worked in novel drug delivery systems, including liposomes. He worked on new chemical entities. He worked on pre-IND studies. He also earlier worked as a research associate in Unichem Labs for almost a year. That's where his pharmaceutical insights begin with. He has a very different specular capacity, which is getting certified into very important aspects that and its statistics. He has recently been awarded with or qualified for a certified for a medical devices ISO 13485 by a British Standard Agency Institute, BSI we call it. Arvindan is also a co-founder and CEO of Actorius Innovations and Research Private Limited for bringing me into innovations and entrepreneurship. He has been convincing while we meet extensive period of a time on the ground rather than in lab. At Actorius, Arvindan was a part of a team which, as I mentioned, developed India's first liquid biopsy technology in a true sense with indigenously developed and approved by Drug Controller General of India and CDSCO. That's an extension of his credit and his ability. He has wide range of experiences in pharmaceutical industry, as I mentioned, and to note again to highlight with 13485 2016 as a expertise lies in creating strategies and operational capabilities for taking technologies from lab to market. He is truly a CEO of any medical device company or drug delivery company, from from purchase to finance to business strategies. And most importantly, Arvindan has been working with me more than for 11 years uh, with no constraints of time, days, months, years, birthdays, holidays, or lockdown as today. So I have a great pleasure. I welcome you, MIT WP today, Arvindan, as a presenter for medical devices introduction and insight. We have our faculty from School of Pharmacy. We have Dr. Kuchekar sir, whom you know very well, and you have continued interactions with him often. We have many company people today participating, and this number just crossed half a century. And welcome on the board, Arvindan, your time.
Thank you, Jain. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And like Jain said, I think I am a jack of all trades rather than a master of one. So my entire scientific or research life has been spent jumping from one discipline to another. I think medical device is something where I have found my home. I've kind of been very specific to this field for the last decade, working very closely with Jayant. And I would like to thank the MIT World Peace University for this opportunity to speak on this topic, which is very close to my heart. And I have tried to keep this lecture very, very basic and very at an introductory level, since I understand that most of you are from the pharmaceutical field, and this is an allied field, and this has certain differences that you can today understand and appreciate. Yeah. Thanks to the MIT World Peace University for this great opportunity. So I always believe that to go from bench to bedside, so which means to go from the patient, to go from the lab to the patient. So before we figure out the means to the end, we have to figure out the end. What it means is, if we have to innovate something, we have to understand in what form are we innovating that before we start to really figure out how we are going to get to that point. So this has been my philosophy. This has been our philosophy in Actorius in trying to develop various products, whether it be in vitro diagnostic tests or whether it be novel drug delivery systems. When we look at the medical devices industry in India, so it is the situation is pretty tragic if you compare it to the pharmaceutical industry. The size of the market is about 10 billion, which is pretty decent, and it's supposed to extend to about 50 billion in another 5 years. But if you see, there are about 800 medical manufacturers, and I think pharma industry is more than 4,000. Average turnover is just 500 million rupees for the manufacturing industry. And if you see about 6,000 medical devices which are present worldwide, only 1/6 are manufactured in India. This is a very poor and very sorry state of affairs. If you consider the pharmaceutical industry where it is today, which is giving about 50% of world exports are through India. We have a large, even though we may not be very dominant in the drug discovery field, but at least generics and we are one of the strongest nations in the world. But unfortunately for medical devices, that is not the case. If you see, about 23 medical devices were notified by the government under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. The great unfortunate part of the story is that the Drugs and Cosmetics Act is still used to regulate medical devices. Now, 2017, the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, which is the organization that drafts rules, which comes under the Drug Controller General of India, drafted the medical device rules, which was published on the January 31st, 2017. Okay. Now, these rules come into effect from 1st January 2018. Now, we have to understand that though these rules were are effective, they still continue to apply under the aegis of the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts. Okay, so these are rules, not regulation. To understand the difference. The only thing that has been put in the favor of the rules are that if there is any contradiction between the provisions of the medical device rules and the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, the provisions of the medical device rules will come into effect. But at least there is now a roadmap to go forward. So any company that wants to innovate, any company that wants to import, and there's a very clear roadmap on what the rules are, how we are going to import, how we are going to innovate, how the product is going to come into the Indian market, and how it is going to, most importantly, get regulated further. Now, I am going to mostly stick to the medical device rules annotations. Okay, so I'm going to stick to the Indian rules, and in between give you a flavor of the FDA or the European MDR. So another thing to remember is there is also an European MDR, which is a medical device regulation, which was supposed to come into force by May 2020, but I think it got postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. And that MDR is different from the MDR in India. So we call the MDR in India MDR medical device rules, and that is medical device regulation. So under the medical device rules of India, the definition of a medical device is any instrument, apparatus, implant. So if you see, it's a gamut of objects that can be, considered as a medical device. intended by a manufacturer for use in, which is important, humans or animals. So in many countries, it's only for humans. For animals, there's a separate set of rules. And for the purpose of diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, or elevation of disease or disorder, same for injury or disability. So this has been clearly demarcated. Investigation, replacement, modification, or support of anatomy or a physiological process. Okay. Supporting or sustaining life, say for example, ventilator. Disinfection of medical device and control of consumption. Now, the most important thing to understand here is medical device is something which does not achieve the primary intended action in or on human body or animals by pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic means. This is where it gets distinguished from a drug. Now, I want to keep this session a little bit interactive. So now that we have seen the definition of a medical device, what I would like to do is I would like to uh, show you a medical device and ask you whether you think, or show you an object and ask you whether it's a medical device or not. So as soon as you see the photo, I would request all of you to just type in the uh, chat box either yes or no. Okay, so if you think it's a medical device, please say yes. If you don't think it's a medical device, please say no. No, this has to be on the basis of the definitions that I gave you just in this slide. Okay. Glucometer. How many of you think this is a medical device? All right. Pretty much everyone is, saying yes. Okay. No, I don't see anybody saying no. The answer is, of course, yes. Why? Because it's for diagnosis, prevention, and monitoring of elevation of disease or disorder. Okay. Next, a stent. Okay. Pretty much a yes. Yes, because it's an investigation, replacement, or modification or support of an anatomical or a physiological process. Okay. Now, what about a drug-eluting stent? Is it a medical device? Okay, I can see a no there. I can see a few no's there. Okay. The answer is it is still a medical device because it does not achieve the primary intended action by pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic means. The primary intention of a stent is different. The drug is for assistance of the stent. It's not drug is not there as a primary action. Okay, so this is also a medical device. What about a syringe? It's a syringe without a needle. Okay, a no. Okay, a yes, a no, a no, a no, a no, a no, 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 no. Okay. Okay. Everybody's almost, I think, saying no. Okay. So a syringe is still a medical device. Okay. Because for treatment of elevation of disease or disorder. Okay. It is a medical device. What about a pre-filled syringe? So where you have either a vaccine or a drug in place. Yes, yes, yes. I can see a lot of yes coming. Okay. So everybody thinks that a pre-filled syringe is a medical device. Okay. Answer is no. Because it does not achieve it achieves, the primary intended action by pharmacological. Think about it. The job of a drug filled syringe is to send drug into the body. So it was intended by the manufacturer to be used as a vaccine or a drug. Okay. So while a syringe by itself is a medical device, a pre-filled syringe is a drug. Okay. All right. What about saline? No, 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 no. Okay. I'm getting many no's. Okay. Let's see. Is saline a medical device? I'm good. Also getting a yes. Okay. No. Again, It does not achieve, it achieves the primary intended action by pharmacological immunometabolic means. Okay, because you mix it. The question is there, why a drug eluting stent is a medical device? Again, see, a stent, the purpose of a stent is to hold it in place and ensure that blood is flowing through, right? The drug is an incidentary addition. It is not the intended purpose of the stent. Okay. The intended purpose matters a lot. Okay. That is the reason why a drug, for example, a band-aid. Okay. A band-aid is considered a medical device, even though it contains a drug, because the role of a band-aid is to close the wound and put compression on the wound. That is the primary intended action. The secondary action is, of course, ensuring that the infection is less, and of course, some curative properties are there. Now, how it gets regulated later on, okay, the classifications I'll tell you. Okay, but a drug eluting stent is still a medical device. What about a blood bag? Some yes, a lot of no's. Okay. Blood bag is a yes, it is a medical device. Please remember, a blood bag comes out of the manufacturing unit just as a plastic bag with specific functions. Okay. So it is a medical device. It is not a not a medical device. It's a medical device. All right. An intraocular lens. Yes. Lot of yes. Okay. Okay. Everybody's pretty much convinced. Right. Yes. Yes, it's a medical device because it is used for support of a anatomical or a physiological process. What about contact lens? No, that's a few yes. Few no's. Most saying yes. Some are saying no. Okay. I'm getting more no's now. Okay. Yes. Again, it is for corrective action, right? That's okay. There's one question, sir. There's a pre-filled syringe is also contains intended amount of drug. Then why it is not? Again, a pre-filled syringe, the intended action, the primary intended action, according to the definition of medical devices, the primary intended action is immunological or biological. Then it is considered as a drug and not a medical device. The primary intended action, that is the word that is very important. A normal syringe, the primary intended action is just to push things into the body. Whereas a pre-filled syringe, it is the primary intended action to ensure that the drug or the vaccine enters the body. So it is considered as a drug and not a medical device. What about contact lens solution? So Balram is asking if any device is empty is called medical device. Actually, no. Medical device should have some medical purpose. Okay. Just so if you get a box, you cannot call it a medical device. Okay. Okay. So there's a lot of no's for a contact lens and a few yes. Okay. So here I can say that it's a yes because it is used for disinfection. So if a contact lens is a medical device, anything used for disinfection of medical device is also a medical device. Probably last, breath analyzer. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. Everybody is thinking it's an yes. The answer is no. Okay. So no, because a breath analyzer is used for purposes of the law. It is not used in medical laboratories or in medical setting for analyzing the blood alcohol content. Okay. So It cannot be used to give medicine or to give treatment. It is not an accepted route. So breath analyzer is only estimated to ensure that the alcohol limit is not high in your body. If it is high, of course you get punished. All right, thank you. I hope this was interesting and it gave you some insight into how complicated the medical device classification and categorization is. So I wanted to do this because what happens if you just run over the definition? The definition is kind of okay. So IR thermometer is a medical device under the new rules. Okay. Then we look at risk-based classification. Okay, so now what happens is as soon as you try to bring a medical device to the market, the regulatory agencies want to understand what risk does it cause to the patients, and based on the classification, the amount of work that you need to do, the amount of documentation that you need to produce, the amount of data that you need to show increases or decreases. Okay. So now if you see the I've given a kind of array of regulatory bodies. So if you start with India, it's pretty simple. It's A, B, C, D. Now under the MDR 2017, it's ABCD for the MDR. It is ABCD for the in vitro diagnostic kits also. So A is the lowest classification, B is low to moderate, C is moderate to high, and D is high. The European norms, which are now new, have two different type of classifications. So one special is for reusable implements, 2A, 2B, and 3. Okay. And they have for the IVDR they have pretty simple A, B, C, D. And the US FDA still uses a very simple classification called 1, 2, and 3. So either you are in class 1, class 2, or class 3. This is where your device falls. Okay, it's very important. And it's very important to understand what classification you will fall into right at the beginning of the development process. Because if you don't understand that, then you will grossly underestimate the amount of work that is required for the product to reach the market. Now, how are these medical devices classified? Okay, so how do you get into 1 or 2 or 3? Okay, that's a question. Please tell me. Yes, that is what I'm getting to. Okay, Vikram, I'm just answering that question. So it depends on 4 factors. What is the duration of the contact of the medical device with the patient? What is the degree of invasiveness? What part of the anatomy is affected? And is it an active or a non-active medical device? So active means basically which runs from some power or energy source. Okay. Now, if you see duration of contact, so a transient medical device is one which runs for less than 60 minutes. It is a short duration. A short-term use device is something which goes from 60 minutes to 30 days. And long-term is something which is probably more than 30 days. Okay. So this is the risk classification. Transient, the risk might be lower. Short-term use, slightly higher, and long-term use, much, much higher. Okay, so you have to ensure that your medical device mitigates all the risks. Second point is invasiveness. So basically, invasive means device in whole or part penetrates inside the body, either through body orifice or through surface of the body. Okay. Say a needle pricking through the body or a saline that you are giving. A body orifice means any natural opening in the human body, okay, or a permanent artificial opening. So the doctor makes an artificial opening which he intends to remain open for the medical device to work. That is a body orifice. And surgical, which is of course penetrating the surface in context of a surgical, which means surgical penetration is always intended to be closed. Okay, that it will not remain open. Okay. Now, segmentation of the medical device. Okay, a non-invasive medical device is something which does not touch your body, or which is just minimally, which causes an invasion. Say a pinprick. Invasive medical device are which require certain amount of invasion into the body through either through orifice or through surgical intervention. Then there are active medical device which are categorized as devices that have a power source. Okay. And then there are special rules, for example, disinfectant, contraceptive. I mean, these come under special rules. Okay, there are so for classifications, you have to look at many things before deciding on these few combinations. So if you see the human body, that I mean, I have just mentioned a few parts, but there's barely a organ which is left away from the clutches of the medical device. So if you see implantable medical device or intraocular lens, stents, hip implants, knee implants, then active implant, the highest risk class, which is active implantable medical device, which has power and which is also implanted in the body. So cochlear implant, pacemakers, insulin pumps. Okay, so these are all active implantable medical devices. Then there is for wound dressing. So now we'll say, okay, a non-invasive medical device may have maybe lowest risk classification. That is not true. So if say it's in a combination, say wound dressing, a dressing which say a burn dressing which gives growth factors and which has antibiotics present, okay, will be classified as a medical device because primary purpose is to give pressure and hold the exudates in place. But it has drugs and it also has to be seen that the safety barrier is much higher there. So even though these classifications are created, every product needs to be looked at from a different point of view. Okay. So this is of course a guideline for the Indian regulatory authority. So if you take class A, which is of course the class where the CLA is of course the central licensing authority. Okay. So for import, if you want to import, you always have to go to the central licensing authority. Now, central licensing authority is the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, which is sitting in Delhi under the Ministry of Family and Health and Welfare. Then for manufacturing license, for class A and B, you have to go to the state licensing authority, which is of course your CDSCO, your zonal CDSCOs, which are for Maharashtra and West Zone, it is situated in Bombay. And for conducting any kind of clinical intervention or clinical trials, you have to take permission from the central licensing authority, which is Delhi. And the final sale license is given from the zonal body. Okay. Post getting the license for class A and class B, you are getting a notified body will come and do your audit. So notified bodies are private companies that are authorized by the central licensing authority to conduct investigations. And for class C and class D device, the central licensing authority itself will do the audits. Now, the standards of the medical device are laid down in the Bureau of Indian Standards. But in general, all medical device companies in India follow the ISO 13485 certification. Okay. A government notification has also been addressed to this fact. Because ISO is the worldwide, ISO 13485 2016 is the worldwide standard for medical device. So in India, 99% of the manufacturers or maybe 100% of the manufacturers will follow the ISO 13485 standards for internal quality management. Now, what an ISO 13485 does, it specifies requirements for the QMS system to demonstrate that the medical device and related services will consistently meet customer and applicable regulatory requirements. So it's not just customer, but also regulatory. So you have to satisfy the customer as well as the regulatory authority. So the benefit of an ISO accreditation, if you get an ISO accreditation by a proper notified body, so you can go worldwide with this certification. Okay. It improves efficiency, cuts costs. Of course, a good quality management system does all that. Now, ISO 13485 has taken birth from ISO 9001. It's most of the clauses are similar to ISO 9001, but there are specific clauses to ISO 13485. 13485 you cannot use for pharmaceutical industry. It is only specific to the medical device industry. If you want to look at a certificate, how so? Before saying what an ISO certificate is, if you want to look at a certificate, so if you see, for example, this is our certificate, what we got for our manufacturing facility. So we have a notified body, which is BSI, which is the British Standard Institute, which has done the audit. The standard name, which is of course the ISO 13485:2016, which means this certificate is for the ISO 13485. The address which is getting certified, a certificate number, which is important, against which you will be checked. Most important part is the scope, which says what is the scope. So we have said design, manufacture, sale, and diagnostic service. Okay. So many people who are just manufacturing for a third party, they will never say design. They will just say manufacture, sale, and manufacture and sale. Okay. Then accreditation body. So accreditation body is the body which gives license to the notified body to accredit. So this is so we did a UCAS accredited audit, which is the United Kingdom Accreditation Service. And then there is of course certificate validation. So if you want to check whether the certificate is still, if you click on the link, you can go ahead and check. Now, effective dates are there. And then this audit has this certificate is valid for 3 years, and every year there's a 1 day or 2 days of surveillance audit to ensure that we are following the procedures, and just after certification we have not given up on ensuring a strong quality management system. Now, if you see, quality management system is not just a simple. It encompasses the entire functions of the medical device manufacturing. So, how you do corrective and preventive action? What is there's a huge onus on the management. The management has to be involved very clearly. The resources have to be planned. You cannot say I am giving resources. You have to prove that you are giving resources. Product surveillance has to be very clear. We have to do risk monitoring. You have to understand if a product fails in manufacturing, you have to really go into the depths to understand why the product failed. There has to be design control. So you have to understand how the user is going to use it and what kind of support he will need in using the device. And of course, process and production control, like you have in pharma, which is of course to understand that there is traceability, there is quality, and your supplier quality is also checked. So these all are aspects which combined form the entire quality management system. So it's a very broad and very thorough certification to ensure that everything is in place for a safe medical device to get into the market. So when you start innovation, so when the first part of the innovation is when you start thinking about the innovation, what comes to mind? So you start writing about it. You start thinking about what you want to do and how your product is going to come into fruition. Okay, how is the user going to use? So all these fall under the category of design input. Design input is built from the customer. You try to understand the customer need. You try to understand the market. You try to understand what kind of products are there in the market. You try to understand the gap in the market. If you are an innovator, okay, and then you add these and form an input, and you say, okay, these are the things that are lacking. These are the things that are required. This is the target that I'm going to focus on, and this is how I'm going to build. And this is what my final product is going to look like. Okay. Once you have documented that, you go into a process called design, process, and review, where you start building the process. There is the R&D process is going on. Then you keep reviewing whether you are getting any closer to the intended target. Then finally, when you want to go to the market, you say, okay, design output. Design output is basically how close are you to what you had thought you were going to build. So that is the design output. So in between, there's a design verification, the design validation process, of course, before you want to technology transfer it to the plant. Customer needs. So like I also already said, for customer needs, you need to understand what is the utility. Who are the patients? Are you going for older patients? Are you going for younger patients? Is it for the general population? What is the frequency of use? Is it high volume? What are the attributes? What kind of features do you want to give in the device? Who is the end user? Is it a point of care device that people are going to use at home? Which means lesser people who are trained lesser. So then the IFU, which is the usage document, has to be very clear to teach the user to use this very well. For example, in case of glucometer, which is mostly a point of care device. But if you're going for a surgeon, it needs to be a more technical writing, and the product needs to be made in that sense that a surgeon can use it. Usability, like I said, a technical user or a layman. Okay. And so, where all the design input can come from? It can come from industry standards, it can come from your regulations, which are very important, of course, Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, medical device rules, or previous projects and products that you have done, maybe from which this can be built. Competitor products, which are, of course, you look at competitor products, you look at the documentation that is available, you look at what they have done, you try to learn from their mistakes, maybe, or you can see a gap in their, in their technology. You do end user survey, try to build. If you see if the prototype is available, you try to build prototype and see if the design input is going to look like that. So these are places where you make the design input. The design output, you have to see how closely that the product output match the proposed input requirements. You write detailed information on how you purchase the raw material, which is very critical, where you get the raw material from. What kind of consumables are you using? What kind of instruments are you using? Is there a service provision in place? Okay. What kind of quality control procedures you have in place for both in-process control and the final product? What characteristics are necessary for safe and proper use? So the information for use sheet, which you find inside a medical device, very important. The technical data sheet, of course, usage instructions and MSDS. These are all part of the design output. Now, once you have built the product, okay, so it needs to be audited before before the regulatory body can give you approval. Okay, so these are some of the notified bodies that are being listed with the Central Drug Standard. I'm not promoting anyone. Okay, I'm just saying these are all international recognized notified bodies, and these are all currently these are the bodies that are doing the audits and the certifications for the company. So you have Intertech and TUV and BNV and BSI, of course, with whom we did the audits, and BSCIC and others, Zenith. Now, the most interesting thing about, so as you are from the pharmaceutical industry, you know that there's a lot of harmonization in the pharmaceutical industry, because pharmaceutical industry started harmonization a long time back. So you have the ICH guidelines. You have of course, pharmacopoeias are different, but then you have an ICH guidelines to follow. Okay. And generally, the differences between country to country are not much. So if you make a product for US, you just have to, there may be a documentary difference between Europe and US, but the work that needs to be put is not much. But the medical device industry is generally if you see the classifications itself, the classifications itself are so different. Okay, so India has a different classification system. US has a 1, 2, 3 classification system. Europe has both ABCD and 1, 2, 3. Okay, for IBDR and NVD. Okay, so what has happened is these countries have come together and said, look, we are regulated countries, and we need to kind of have a program that does not put the burden on the customer or the manufacturer, right? So the medical device single audit program allows a single regulatory audit of a medical device manufacturer that satisfies relevant requirements. Okay, and the basis of this medical device single audit program is the ISO 13485. So you need to have an ISO 13485 certification, and then if you get an MD SAP audit done, then you are in place to apply to these different countries for regulatory approvals to sell in this country. So for now, the US, Brazil, the ANVISA Brazil, the US FDA, the Health Canada, the Japanese Pharmaceutical Medical Device Agency, and the TGA Australia are participants. With the EU and the WHO now, recently they are also as ancillaries. Okay. So India is looking at this program, but we need to overall our infrastructure first, our rules and regulations, which is what ground level work is going on. Post which I'm sure that India will also be a signatory to this program. Quickly, I would like to take you through, say, a case study, which is of course our product. and which is the first in vitro diagnostic device to get approval in India. First indigenously developed. Okay, we only import. So this is developed in India. This product is developed in India and got the first device to get an approval in the new medical device regulations. Okay, so if you see cancer, as you know, it's a disease which has a huge mortality rate. If you compare the survival rate in India and North America, it's absolutely poor. Only 30% of our patients survive for 5 years. Okay, and the rate of the ratio of oncologists to patient is about 1:2. Most of our oncologists who get trained, they go abroad for a better prospect. There are few oncologists in India. Now, where we saw the unmet need, where we try to see the unmet need is there's a huge gap between when the cancer is diagnosed and when the cancer is formed. So this gap is not diagnosed by any technology. Okay, and then once the cancer is diagnosed, even after treatment, the recurrence is mostly symptomatic. So only when symptoms occur, people understand that there is a recurrence. Most of the cases. So there is a huge gap between uh, the proliferation of cancer and the diagnosis of the cancer. So this is the gap that we saw in the market, and we said, look, we have to do something to address this. So what we looked at is that circulating tumor cells. So circulating tumor cells are cells that have been shed from the primary tumor into the bloodstream. Okay, these are cancer cells basically, and they are the seeds for the metastatic process. So you must, I'm sure you know what metastasis is. Basically, cancer cell going from one organ to spreading from one organ to another and then forming secondary tumors. Okay. Now, you see the photo of Lance Armstrong. I mean, I use this example because he's probably the most famous cancer survivor in the world. And imagine that this person is at the peak of a sport where he's getting tested left and right. Okay. And they could not detect the cancer in him till it was symptomatic. And by the time they detected, the cancer had spread to his abdomen, to his lungs, to his brain. Okay, so the metastatic process is so fast. And luckily for him, the tumors in the brain were necrotic. They were able to remove it by surgery. And then he said no. He didn't opt for conventional therapy because conventional therapy would have destroyed his lungs. So what he did is he went for a new clinical trial, and I think it was cisplatin, and it saved his lungs. And then after coming back from the cancer surgery and all, and he won about 7 Tour de France. Of course, the rest of the story also you know. He's known as a drug cheat around the world. But it's a great story to look at. A person who survived and came back. You see how important so he's one of the few lucky people who survived. With this kind of metastasis, the chances of survival are very poor. The prognosis is very poor. Okay, so this is kind of damage that circulating tumor cells can do. What we saw was, so our design input was the current techniques are not sensitive enough. So MRI and CT scan can only detect tumors after they grow to a certain point. Biopsies are extremely painful and invasive. You cannot do it multiple times. And then diagnosis is of the tumor and not the spread. The spread can only be seen once secondary tumors are growing. Also, diagnostic in most of the cases is symptomatic. Of course, if you get blood in your stool or you get some lumps or you are getting constant coughing, that is symptomatically you come to know that there is something wrong. Right? And then real-time monitoring is not possible. So the solution was to detect cancer cells shed by primary tumor in the bloodstream, which is to detect the cancer cell. Now, this is, of course, kudos to Dr. Jayant, who is the innovator of this technology, who built an antibody-based targeting system by using very novel and cutting-edge materials, where we could detect minute amount of circulating cells between the whole noise, which is, of course, like 1 ml of cancer cells. There are 1 ml of blood. There are 1 billion red blood cells, about 7 to 8 million white blood cells. So it's like finding a needle in a haystack. So we were able to detect this with the highest degree of sensitivity. We developed this OncoDiscover technology. We filed a patent. And this technology as of today is approved for marketing in India. And since August we have started, August of 2019, we have started marketing in India. And if you see our regulatory journey for taking, well, it started a long time ago. It started in 2013. We started to write grants and we started to build the product. But from our first step, we see in 2016 when we went to the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, when we got almost 3 years. It took us 3 years to get the product from lab to the market. It is not a short journey. It's not as long as a pharmaceutical drug, but it is still a long journey. And unfortunately, well, I would say unfortunately, but we were caught between the transition of the medical device industry from the Drugs and Cosmetics Act to the new MDR. So when we finished submitting everything, the Central Drug Standard Organization said, no, we now have a new rule. Please start submitting this under the new. But they have been very helpful, and since it was an innovative technology, since it's an unmet need in India, they were very, very supportive. Once we had submitted, and once they were happy that everything is in place and that this thing is safe, they of course gave us the permission to manufacture this product. So as you can see, the journey is not simple, but it takes some amount of effort to get it from the lab to the market, and it takes all those understandings that I've given you in the lecture. You need to understand the end point before you can really start building the product. Right? Thank you. That's my lecture. Jain.
Thank you, Arvindan. We can take now questions, and it was a wonderful exercise through chat. Actually, I think the number of entries that we received in chat is very, very high today, Arvindan, and that was good methodology to actually bring down the fundamentals and definitions about medical devices with many examples, almost 7 to 8 examples you might have taken today. So I could actually, we have an privilege of time today to take questions. Yesterday's webinars, we could not, respect many questions.
Yeah.
My first question, which is very impromptu, before the audience actually construct their questions, and they can actually unmute and ask questions directly. So you also mentioned that Class A is actually rules are governed for approvals and permissions from the Zonal Regulatory Office, right? Drug Controller General of India's Mumbai office for Maharashtra, right? So does this mean that I want you to elaborate a little bit more difference between predicate medical device and non-predicate device, and will non-predicate device will also be approved by zonal DCGI even if it is new? How it is? How?
Sure. So I'm purely talking in the Indian context. Okay. So predicate device is basically what it means is there exists a device which is in similar function to the device that you are trying to build. You can show to the regulatory authority that look, that is an approved device that is similar to what I'm building. Okay. And since that is already approved, my burden for proving that my device is safe and it works is far lesser. Okay, so you can show and say, okay, this is there. In some cases, in many cases, if you have a predicate device, you need not even do safety studies. Okay, if it is very close. And non-predicate devices, where you are getting completely new innovation, and you are saying that there is nothing of this sort in the market, where you cannot prove that there is anything of this sort in the market, and you have to do a lot of studies to ensure that the device is safe and the intended use is happening properly. Now, in our case, of course, this is a non-predicate device, and we had to go to the Central Drug Standard Organization, and they had to look at it using a in vitro diagnostic committee, which consists of oncologists and doctors and immunologists and all from different parts of India, including AIIMS and Gujarat State Cancer Institute and all, and where they thoroughly reviewed our technology, and that is the difference. And classification, I would like to say one point is classification is very strange. It's the interpretation depends from person to person. So, for example, in our case, we were thinking that our classification was probably far more safer and lower classification because we are in vitro diagnostic device and everything is happening outside the body. But since we were a non-predicate device, they actually gave us a higher classification since they wanted to audit us from time to time. Okay, and the biggest problem in India is under these rules is once you are classified, you cannot change the classification. If I'm classified as a class B, I cannot change my classification. I hope that answers the question here.
So I can request now others to take questions. Bhavesh has a question. Vikram has a question. Dr. Abhijit Gotaskar has very interesting question. So you can unmute your question.
I think there was one question on insulin pen. Okay, it was very
maybe you read it so you could answer directly.
Yeah. So see, very interesting. Actually, can I just ask everybody, is an insulin pen a medical device or a drug? Alan says it is, but he says a drug. Okay.
Today's audience is they are very fast at fingers.
Yeah, I know. All right. So an insulin pen is a medical device. Okay. Now, the reason being is the primary intended action of an insulin pen. Why an insulin pen is built? It is built with specification to push the insulin in. Okay. You might say a needle is also built to push it's not true, but the primary intended action of the insulin pen is to push the needle in. Whether an insulin acts inside the body or not is dependent on the blood sugar of the person. Okay. It is only refilling, So it's like the blood bag. The blood bag intends to only push the blood into the body. Okay. So an insulin pen is a medical device. Okay. One question.
So Abhijit, you want to? Yeah, Abhijit could ask question, and then I think Professor Preeti Sangve can ask her question. Abhijit. So I will ask a question since he is not around, I think, or he's on a mute note. He asked whether AI and ML systems will be considered as a medical devices or anything related to IoT, maybe probably. What is it?
Yes. So if you see the definition of the medical device in India, it says software and accessories. Okay. Now, if say, for example, for biopsy, now for radiological imaging for histopathology, people are using AI and ML to understand where the cancer cells are present, okay, or what type of cancer is present. Now, if that is approved, that will become a medical device. If that is used for radiological screening, it will become medical device. And then the AI and all, ML and all, you will have to, the software, the coding will also have to be done according to certain norms. And you have to do the software validation for the software. So there is, of course, a large process for that. So AI and ML definitely, which are used for medical device purposes, will come under medical device, the software.
Right. So Professor Bharde has a question. If you read on a chat.
Yeah. So okay. The definition of
definition, or I think intended definition, probably he want to say.
Use of the device determines the device to be defined as a medical. I think you have to look at this holistically. Okay. The intended definition is the core. Okay. But then there are other definitions also. Okay. So while the intended definition is probably the most important aspect, on its whole, it doesn't, on its own, it doesn't define a medical device. Okay. There have to be other aspects also which are in place.
Right. So Rituja is asking question, but before that, Vikram asked a question. I think Vikram is in Mohali from Naipur. He asked question that so risk definition, right? Is it a risk to the patient or manufacturing process is risk, right? Already you mentioned, but I think you would like to again brush on it.
So risk is a whole different ball game. So there is a ISO standard called ISO 14971, which is a ancillary standard to the ISO 13485. That is risk management. So risk classification is not just patient; it incorporates every kind of risk. It incorporates manufacturing risk, supply chain risk, storage risk, delivery risk, different kind of handling risks. It encompasses every kind of risk. So the medical device companies are constantly looking at risk management as a part. Even after the product goes into the market, they constantly look at feedback from the customers. Okay, they look at any hazardous event that has happened, and they look at what kind of risk is. Say for example, I just saw CDSCO notification which said one medical device. I will not take the name here, but the batteries were going low quickly. Okay. Now the company might have put the best kind of batteries in place, but the system must be drawing more power. The batteries must have been going low much quickly. So that product they recall. So the risks are a multitude, but the patient risk is the biggest risk, of course. That when it goes to the market and it goes to the regulatory authorities, that is what they look at.
So invasiveness is the highest parameter, I think, measure of defining the risk.
Jayant, again, invasiveness is also different kinds of invasiveness. Are there. Some invasiveness, or like I said, your duration also matters. How much time the invasive medical device is going to be in the body. The anatomy that the invasive device. So a knee invasion is may not say far, but it is less dangerous than a invasion in the heart. Say a pacemaker is also invasive. A knee replacement is also invasive. Okay, but the risk.
So can you classify now these three medical devices, Arvind? Sorry, can you classify these three, differentiating what you said is a stent, right? Medical stent or ordinary stent or drug-eluting stent versus a knee replacement unit, right? And versus you said actually a pulse supply, right? Hearts.
Correct. See again. So every country classifies this different. Like I said, it's all on interpretation. Again. So when I say that a stent, can I compare direct? So for example, a stent and say a pacemaker may fall under same category. Say in US FDA category, they might be say class 3. Okay, they might be in the same category. Okay, but the amount of documentation that you may need to do for a stent or even a drug-eluting stent might be different and more. Okay. So unlike drugs, drugs have very clear, there's very clear understanding on what you need to do for a drug. Okay, what you need to prove, what all for medical device, unfortunately, this cannot be answered by anybody in that way. Only you can look at classification, say, okay, in India it is classified. So if something is in class 2, you can say, okay, class 3, class A is different from say class D. Okay, what physically you know. So so that is why Jayant, for us it became very difficult. So we wanted it to be in a lower classification, and then we were purposely given a higher classification because government wanted to play on the safer side.
So all these three examples are class, which class? D class in Indian definition.
Yes.
So let's move to the next question. Maybe 2 minutes before we close off. There's a question from Rituja, and before that, there's another question. Does it mean that the drug is unapproved, then the approval of medical device is not possible? That's an obvious, right?
So obvious. That's an obvious, because you need to know the.
Then Rituja has a question: is the process of free classification of device not applicable in India or other countries too?
So Europe you can reclassify. I think in US also you can reclassify. Or US, at least what happens is, before you go to the regulatory authority, they have a discussion where they give you their opinion that which classification they are going to place this thing under. Okay. So in India, if we start that kind of thing now, that it will be much easier. But then in Europe, at least I know that, in my understanding, that if you are classified under a higher risk classification, and if you can prove over the years that that much risk is not there, you can be reclassified to a lower setting.
Right. Then there is Professor Outsert is asking, what about theranostics? So you want to comment on that?
What about theranostics?
Right.
Theranostics,
is that
okay.
a definition taken in medical devices, or it is not?
Yeah. Theranostics are, of course, part of medical devices. So, for example, our device we market it as a theranostic device.
Right.
Okay, because it aids therapy. So, if you see the diagnosis, basically it's prognosis, diagnosis, and theranostics, basically. So, prognosis is how.
So that's an ideal medical device purpose, I think, right?
Ideal diagnostic medical device. Yes.
So, Satish, you want to unmute and ask question, or I take it, Satish?
So yes, sir.
Periodic. No, please ask.
Yeah. No, please ask. Yes, sir. My question is, sir, for medical devices, is it required for renewal of license registration every year? Yeah. Any kind of regulations are there regarding this?
No, license is perpetual.
Okay.
You can just unmute
renewal
your
type.
mic. Yeah, sorry. So license is perpetual, but you need to ensure that your license is, current, and you are following all the norms. Okay. The license doesn't have an expiry date as such.
So we move to the next question. What can be amendment in the acts to make fast track to get into the market? So our Professor RV asked these questions.
Yeah, so basically, medical device rules is the first step. Okay. Now, medical device rules, there is a possibility that it can become an act separate from Drugs and Cosmetics Act. If that happens, what happens is this. So currently, medical devices are regulated as drugs. Okay. So if it can be separated from the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, then what happens is there's a separate act for medical devices. There's a clarity on the process. Okay. There was also a talk in between where Niti Aayog was proposing that a separate medical device regulatory body be formed. Okay. But the Ministry of Health was against this. So they wanted to form another CDSCO-like body. But what the government of India is doing is they are recruiting very highly in the medical device space. They are hiring more inspectors, medical device inspectors, and the regulations. At least, see, from my understanding, we are still at a very nascent stage. We cannot compare ourselves to Europe and US, where innovations are left and right. Innovations are coming. Right? At least there are rules in place for us to understand that we can go ahead stepwise, and there is something to benchmark against in India, that we don't need to sit and think will this product get approved or not. So currently rules are fine, and then the rules may be amended from time to time. So for example, latest amendment where from 23 medical devices now, almost the definition that I gave you is not in the current, not inside the MDR, but rather as a separate government notification. So the definition where I said that immunological action and all that, the first definition that I gave you, so that comes under a separate.
Right. So we have here now two more questions, and maybe before we close it, Professor Preeti, can you unmute your mic and want to ask a question? Yes.
Yes.
Great presentation. Very nice. Explained, and it's like crystal clear to all of us. It might be an offbeat question, like from developmental to the market. How market survey plays a role? I mean, was it integral when you developed your product? I mean, just
sorry, I cannot hear the first part of your question.
First was I appreciated your presentation.
No, not that. I cannot hear your question at all.
that market survey, marketing agency being hired to carry out maybe the statistical analysis or the identification, and where does the innovation fit in? When does market survey kind of agency or a third party help is required, or just the facts and figures and literally somebody is intended to develop a product?
Correct. Yeah. Understood.
For example.
Understood. See, for us, what happened is we did it's very expensive to go in for a market survey, and also market surveys and all are done by large medical device companies which have that financial power. So what we did a lot of literature survey, looked at the different products that were available in the market, looked at what the gap was. Okay. So we did a lot of study. We said, what is cancer diagnostics? What is, what is basically, so basically we looked at strengths. So Jayant looked at his strengths and said, what are my strengths? My strength is developing great materials, developing cutting edge materials, right? So where can this material science strength be used? So we didn't start a pharma company when we moved out of Piramal. We started a medical device company because probably lesser risk, lesser, the path to market is far simpler and costs probably far less. Okay. And actually it went true because that's how we got to the market. Spending far lesser than if I started a pharmaceutical, say Jayant and I moved out of Piramal and said, okay, let's start a drug discovery company. I think we wouldn't have lasted a year.
I know. Correct. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So now I think we have another two questions. Dr. Gurjar is asking, last fifth line, do medical devices need clinical trials, or there is other kind of criteria for testing of these devices? I think you want to answer this one line before we go to the
Sure. So clinical trials in case of medical devices are different from pharma. So pharma where you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Okay. So what we do in clinical trials is called performance evaluation. Okay. Now, based on the kind of risk which is with the device, associated with the device, the clinical trial might be slightly longer. You have a statistically significant number of patients, and you have to prove that your medical device is effective and your medical device is safe. Okay. And so, of course, you do some preclinical also. For example, burn wounds, for example, if you want to do so, you take the porcine model and you test it in the porcine model and first ensure that safety is there. Then you go to human beings, right? And that is not as long as the medical device. So in India, for example, to test medical device, there are clear-cut. There are institutes where you have to go to test your medical device. So for us, for example, it was Tata Memorial Hospital, where we did our entire clinical study. And now nearing almost 500 patients now. So that was what was sufficient for us to do. For some, it will be more. So again, like I said, for medical device, there is no the parts are still very vague, and because there is, just imagine there is so much difference between the kind of, so you can have a bone graft, and you can have a stent, and you can have an insulin pen, you can have a in vitro glucometer. These are so different. These devices are. The variety is so different. So there cannot be like one set. So again, Indian context where they say, for a clinical device needs to be regulated as a drug. That is the biggest fallacy that needs to be changed. And that is what people are doing.
So in short, medical devices need very critical clinical trials approvals, both from hospitals, IEC committees, then DCGI. No company can actually take a clinical trial involving human samples, including urine or swab, without any permissions, and that must be notified to DCGI or CDSU. And as you mentioned, Arvindan, the clinical performance thereof is most important and validated by CDSU in Delhi by a committee. So let's move to the last question for today. For startups who are interested in medical devices, what suggestion would you like to give, and which segment should they target? So how do you decide? I think you already answered, but you want to comment on that?
I would say I would say that it depends on the strength first, what you are able to build. Okay. I mean, suddenly you cannot wake up and say, I'll build the best knee implant in the world. you must have that ability to, or the scientific capability to, do that. I would say, I mean, to perfectly answer this question, I would say in vitro devices are the lowest risk, and probably, your chances of, making an in vitro device are always higher, because it involves, it doesn't directly involve human. I mean, you don't inject something into the human body, so the safety parameters for that are far lesser, right? You either take, you take any kind of fluid from the human body, say tissue or say fluid, and then you do a test outside the body on that. Okay, so I would say, if you really want to do in vitro diagnostic, if you're thinking of something of the safest, maybe it's an in vitro device is probably the safest to start with. But then every device, has its, advantages and disadvantages, and it depends on your strengths and what is your ability to build, and your capacity, and your capacity also in terms of, raising funds, raising, capital to, survive and to get consumables and all that.
So in short, if it is a me too, then it's very easy. But if it is a non-predicate, first time, be it a very simple content, the proving that it has a clinical performance and conformity, the word I think we haven't used today, probably is very, very difficult and challenging. So we have a last question for today, that Professor Swati Jagdale, madam. Madam, you want to ask a question? For medical device, is criteria for clinical trials for all countries same? That's the last question, Arvind.
Yeah. So criteria will, see, general good clinical practices should be followed. Okay. And but some countries may ask you to do more studies. Say, for example, maybe the amount of studies that you do in India may not be sufficient for the US. They might say, no, you do more studies. You do, say, it all depends. So till you're following good clinical practices, till you're following statistical significant sample size, till your study design is thorough and robust, you usually are in the clear. But a regulatory agency is, like I said, interpretations vary, and it is not like drug. Like I said, pharma industry is very, very standardized. Where, the agency might say that, like I said, like Jain said, for a non-predicate device especially, it's very difficult to predict, what may be enough.
So let me actually say a vote of thanks here. Kuchekar sir, are you here?
Yes, I am here.
First, I will say a small vote of thanks to Arvindan. And we have a wonderful audience today who actually participated, had many questions. I also understood some of the aspects of medical devices, fundamentals, which we otherwise don't speak. So let me, I do this very rarely to Arvindan. Please accept my thanks for today's talk and for the wonderful work that you have been doing, not for us, but I think for the community. And thank you for accepting our invite to take a webinar. I know how you have stuck up at home for the work for home, for you, for your office, for your parents. And on behalf of MIT WPU School of Pharmacy and my staff and students, there have been wonderful participation from professors from various institutes, academicians from SPPU, like Atul was there, Abhijit was there. And I now request Dr. Kuchekar sir to say a few words, few sentences for you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Dr. Arvindan, I have one question. Rather, I need a clarification, sir. It is learned that further to medical devices rule 2017, central government has come up with order or circular, or we can say notification, that the medical devices will be treated as a drug with effect from 1st April to 2020. With reference to this, my question is whether all the medical devices are under drugs. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So as you know, it's anyways. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
I can hear Arvindan.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Your question was audible. He got your question.
Yeah.
So, so it was just to clear, I think, some I'm not very sure. I have not seen this notification, unfortunately. But medical devices have been, if you see the definition of the medical device rules, they are under Drugs and Cosmetics Act. They are audited as, they are regulated as drugs, even now, all medical devices. I don't know why this special, I need to read the notification. Unfortunately, I have not. But I don't know why
That
this
is
special.
of 11th February 2020 it is.
Okay. So
Yes, sir.
maybe
Okay.
missed me. But anyways, medical devices are regulated as drugs, and which should not be. They should be regulated differently. But the Indian government seems, and CDSCO seems to believe that they still need to do it in the same manner. So,
Hello.
yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Sir, I, on behalf of entire MIT World Peace University and School of Pharmacy, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Dr. Arvindan, who is the CEO and co-founder of Actoris Innovation and Research. Sir. Sir has very well explained the provisions of medical devices, and lastly, he has narrated the journey of OncoDiscover, liquid biopsy technique, which is really inspirational to all of us. Sir, I would like to thank you for making an excellent presentation and making this webinar a very meaningful, interesting, as well as interacting. I would like at the same time to thank Professor Khandare for identifying the galaxy of speakers like Arvindan sir for this webinar series. I thank Dr. Khandare for introducing the today's speaker and moderating the session very nicely. I also thank all the participants for patiently listening. I thank Professor Vishal Pawar and Pankaj for technical support. And lastly, I thank our Executive President, Vice Chancellor, Pro Vice Chancellor for their kind support in organizing such type of webinars. Lastly, I thank once again Arvindan sir for your nice presentation. Thank you so much.
Before I close the meeting, let me announce that at 2:30 we have another wonderful session who is our again friend and has been adjunct faculty, Dr. Abhijit Gotaskar, and will speak on pharmaceutical formulation and manufacturing post-COVID-19. And I'm sure that this session will also be another treat for all of us in the afternoon. So please, may I request you, all of you, to join this session within few hours. With this, let me say goodbye, and all of us must continue to take care in lockdown, and have a wonderful day ahead. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Kuchekar. Thank you, Jayant. See you.
Thank you, sir.